And we are back with part 2 of SplashClan years 4, 5, and 6, and because this is just a part 2, this is just a continuation of what we were doing last time, I'm not going to spend any time on an intro, and we are just going to get into the cats. So, last time, AlgaeFreckle was still an apprentice, but he later became a warrior the month after his sister Scorchpaw died, and he was honored for his flexibility. The death of his sister before he even became a warrior hit him hard, and he became a whole lot more troublesome as a result. Even though he was troublesome, he was still an excellent teacher, and that was entirely thanks to his mentor Thunderisle. At one point, he caught Whitepaw breaking the warrior code after months of entirely ignoring it, and after he gave him a long lecture, it seemed from then on that Whitepaw understood the point of the code and began to follow the rules more. Later, AlgaeFreckle began to grow tired of Ganetstar's leadership and publicly critiqued her, which resulted in her punishing him physically just as she did with Lightspots, but she didn't order anyone to help her. AlgaeFreckle was just left with a small scar like Ganetstar, Snapford, and Lightspots did when they had fought, but his was only a tiny bite wound that could blend into his fur easier than their wounds could. He wanted nothing more than for his clan to be strong, and that meant having a good leader, and he truly believes that Ganetstar is a bad leader. AlgaeFreckle is the type of guy who wants to do the right thing, and he's not afraid to get in trouble for that. If anything, I think he likes the thrill of doing troublesome things more than he actually likes doing the right thing. At one point, he rescued Dappled Speckle from a snake that had nearly bitten him, similarly to how his dad Jade Zinnia had previously done the same thing for Longpool, but he later took that same dead snake and laid it out near the entrance of camp to scare Dappled Speckle right after it had happened, which just goes to show how troublesome he really is. AlgaeFreckle later dislocated his leg, which eventually healed, but it left him with permanent joint pain that every once in a while will leave him unable to do his duties. It wasn't long after this when he brought a litter of 6 kittens into the clan and explained that they were his own. He said the other parent was a cat from outside the clans who had died during the birth, and that he felt it was his duty as the kitten's father to take care of them. He named the kits Scorchkit, QuietKit, Sparkkit, Rippleheart, Minkkit, and Bushkit. Due to him almost never showing his true emotions, the other cats in the clan were unsure if he was even upset with the fact that his apparent mate had died, and someone had even started a rumor that he had lied and had actually stolen the kits from a rogue or even another clan. Of course the rumors were false, and deep down he was in a lot of pain. He was able to cover up his emotions and keep doing his job as a warrior perfectly fine, if not for his joint pain that would occasionally flare up. He loves all of his kits, but he's closest to Minkkit in particular, as the two get along the best and they both enjoy spending time together. As for his relationship with other cats in the clan, he still has romantic feelings for Bowdon even after she had died, and has begun to develop feelings for another newcomer in the clan, a former loner named Old Deuteronomy Plume. For the first time in his life, he let his true emotions show when his father, Jade Zinnia, died. 2 of his kits had already died as apprentices, and with all the past grief he'd been forced to endure, he just couldn't take it, and has been grieving over his death for the past few moons. To give him some form of distraction, he's been keeping his eyes on the kits of the clan and hopes to get one of them as a future apprentice, particularly Patchouli Kit and Pool Kit. Downface was named a warrior at the start of year 4 by Ganetstar alongside her sister Gorgeflight. She was honored for her responsibility, and now that she was a warrior, she was already thinking to the future about how she could get better and better, maybe even becoming a deputy someday. It's thanks to Brackenshade being her mentor that she became even more fierce and abrasive, to the point that her clanmates began to become a tad annoyed with her. Later the same month, her sister died while on patrol, but she kept working to avoid falling into grief. A few months later, she was taken away by Two Legs while out on patrol with Ganetstar and Curlrise, the cat who she still has a crush on to this day. Thankfully, Downface was able to escape and returned only 2 months later, and her family and clanmates couldn't have been happier to have her back. She still thinks her brother AlgaeFreckle is super cool and tries to imitate him a lot. At one point, she caught Orangepaw minorly breaking the warrior code and gave her a lecture just like she had seen her brother had done to Whitepaw. Orangepaw was a lot more understanding than her brothers and even appreciated Downface's words. It wasn't long after this when Downface's leg was caught in a 2-leg trap, and while she recovered from the injury, she was left with a permanent limp. Downface is the type of cat to really care about what everyone else thinks of her, and knowing that for a while she was super annoying to the others really got her down. Knowing that the cats she lived and trained with may have not wanted her around hurt a lot, and so she tends to stick with a specific group of cats she knows are her friends: Jellyfish Speckle, her brother AlgaeFreckle, Curlrise, and strangely enough, Patchouli Kit. She wants nothing more than to mentor him in particular, and she loves this little guy so much, it's adorable. The only issue with this is that she's currently got an apprentice of her own, Tidalpaw, who happens to be her younger sister. Titlepaw will for sure be a warrior by the time Petulike is an apprentice, but why would Ganetstar give her another apprentice right after she had just finished training her first? She's trying to set herself up for disappointment, but she can't help it. She loves Petulike a lot and wants to make sure he's got a good mentor. As for her friends, she's got crushes on both Jellyfish Speckle and Curlrise, and even had a bit of a developing crush on Orangefreckle before she died. I hope Downface can get with one of them. Seeing her with Jellyfish Speckle would be my personal pick though. Curlrise is the last living kit from Thunder Owl's older litter of kits. He was made a warrior the same month as his littermates and was honored for his commitment. Strangely enough, Curlrise began to become a lot more interested in StarClan and is easily the most faithful and religious cat in the entire clan. It wasn't long after this when he realized he was non-binary, and so from now on, they will be referred to with they-them pronouns. They hope that StarClan is watching over them, and they try their best to get other cats as interested in StarClan as they are, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case. After the deaths of their littermates, Bowdon and Dappled Speckle, they became even more interested in StarClan and hoped that the rest of their family would be kept safe and sound. They later received their very first apprentice, Ripplepaw, who just like the rest of their clanmates, was uninterested in Curlrise's constant talks about StarClan. They have romantic feelings toward Downface, but in terms of their friendship, it's very one-sided. They like her, of course, but there's not much there aside from her thinking of them as one of their friends. Since the deaths of his littermates, he's grown closer to his adopted brothers, Screech and Whitestrike, but even then, it's clear that Curlrise just won't be the same without his littermates. Next up is Stone Screech, who I've mentioned before is one of Orangefreckle's younger littermates. Stone Screech was born as a rogue named Stone, however when he was 5 months old, he and his littermates were abandoned in SplashClan territory due to their mother feeling as though she couldn't care for them anymore. She thought that the clans would be a nice and safe place to leave them, and once they were found, Thunder Owl took them in as her own, and Stone was renamed to Stonekit. It became very clear to the clan that Stonekit was the biggest problem of his littermates, as he was a big bully to Orangekit and Whitekit, who was later apprenticed to his older adoptive sister Bowdon, though the two didn't grow very close past them just being siblings and her being his mentor. She put him to work, and so from then on, he didn't have the time to torment his littermates as much as he did before, but becoming an apprentice gave him a sense of power he had never felt before. He became hungry for battle and to tear his claws into something, and so it was Bowdon's task to, calm him down. Throughout his apprenticeship, he remained antagonistic towards his littermates, particularly Whitepaw, who he had grown jealous of, as he felt his brother was far more skilled than he was. He frequently got himself into trouble, like when he fell out of a tree trying to show off and one-up Whitepaw, and then later fell into the creek while trying and failing to jump over it. Somehow, with how hard he tried to be better than his siblings, it worked in his favor and he was made a warrior a month before his siblings were. He was named Stone Screech and he was honored for his skill and strategy. In his time of competing with his littermates and having been raised by Thunder Owl, he had grown into a very vengeful young cat, and by this point he had thankfully grown out of his nasty streak. He's more skilled in hunting now than he is with fighting, but he's still a very fierce warrior. Recently, he's become a lot more content in the clan and has begun to really admire Jellyfish Speckle in particular. She seems like such a nice and friendly cat and seems to treat him better than anyone else in the clan, and so he really wants to get to know her better. It's definitely a bit of a one-sided relationship though, because while Jellyfish Speckle likes him, there's not much of a relationship on her end. There's no romantic feelings on either side, so it looks to me that this is the start of a really nice friendship. During the war, he helped his clan in battle and fought fiercely against Hayes Clan's warriors, but was injured after a brutal fight which he didn't take very well. He hoped that the warrior who had injured him would soon die, be sent to the Dark Forest, and pay for what they had done to him. He later recovered and was perfectly fine, but I think that just goes to show that he picked up on his mom's tendency to be overly dramatic about things that don't need to be overly dramatic. Similarly to his mom, he wants to be made deputy in the future, but as of now, he hasn't had an apprentice of his own, but with all the kits in the clan, I think it's likely that he might be able to get one. The only issue is that he's currently sick with white cough, so we can only hope he'll be able to recover. Whitestrike, born as White and later renamed Whitekit, was the youngest of Thunder Owl's adopted litter of kits. He was the noisiest of his siblings initially and was the most rambunctious kit in the nursery, somehow beating his other rambunctious brother Stonekit. He was later apprenticed to Weedspeckle and slowly began to become more confident in his abilities. He truly felt that only a month after he was apprenticed, he was fully ready to be a warrior, and his mentor Weedspeckle had to nicely tell him that there was no way that any cat in the clan would think he was ready. Just like how his brother Stonepaw became super competitive with him, White Whitepaw became super competitive as well, and they got into a lot of trouble from the many times he and his brother tried to beat each other in stupid things. While trying to race from one end of the territory to another, Whitepaw tripped over a fallen log and bruised himself and had to be scolded by the warriors for being super loud and scaring off all the prey. As punishment, he was sent out to hunt for the elders, but was later caught by AlgaeFreckle eating when he wasn't supposed to. AlgaeFreckle told him off and then gently explained to him the importance of the warrior code and why he should follow it more. Strangely enough, Whitepaw took AlgaeFreckle's words to heart, and then from then on was a lot more respectful of his clanmates. A month after Screech became a warrior, Whitestrike was named one as well and was honored for his shrewdness. Strangely enough, Whitestrike somehow picked up on his mentor Wheatspeckle's strong connection to StarClan, which is definitely interesting. Through his time as an apprentice, he had become more and more skilled in avoiding everyone and keeping clan secrets to himself, and so now as a warrior, he's easily the sneakiest cat in the clan, and no one seems to know what he's doing or what he's planning half the time. Later, Whitestrike was caught in a two-leg trap, and though he was able to escape, his leg was heavily injured. While trying to recover from his hurt leg, he caught green cough, and a few months later, his leg became infected, which of course didn't help. Thankfully, he was able to recover from both of these things, but his leg had to be amputated. But it doesn't seem like only having 3 legs bothers him at all. He's still just as sneaky and secretive as he was before. The one thing about his missing leg that bothers him is that his leg has become infected twice now since being initially amputated. He's gotten better both times, but as a result, he's missed out on a pretty large chunk of his clan's war. During the war, his littermate, AlgaeFreckle, was killed, and his older sister, Bowdon, was heavily injured in the battle. The same month, his missing leg became infected, and he snuck out of the camp and refused to tell anyone what he was planning. Unbeknownst to the rest of the clan, he had snuck off to Clan and had murdered the warrior who had brutally injured Bowdon, who just so happened to have been Bowdon's second parent. Bowdon later succumbed to her injuries, but Whitestrike was able to pick himself up from the pain of the situation quickly, thanks to having already taken out his anger and avenged his sisters in his mind. The war is now over and things have calmed down for Whitestrike, but his missing leg has become infected for a second time, and in general he seems a lot gloomier than he usually is. To the rest of the clan, it seems like his grief over the deaths of his older siblings, Bowdon and Dappled-Speckle, as well as his littermate AlgaeFreckle, are finally hitting him, but he tries his best not to let it show. He's very thankful that recently he's been able to grow closer to his brother Screech, as now that AlgaeFreckle is gone, he's begun to feel very lonely, and having his brother at his side definitely helps. Now on to one of the newcomers in the clan, Jumbledapple. As mentioned before, Jumbledapple was once a kitty pet named Jumble who had been taken care of by a cruel human. After a while, she had enough and fled. Terrified of the outside world, she had no idea what to do or where to go, at least until she stumbled across Brackenshade, who invited her into SplashClan. She changed her name to Jumbledapple and ever since has been a loyal warrior. Though she's easily the most lonesome of the cats in SplashClan, I think it's pretty clear why. Having been hurt by the two-leg who owned her, she has a hard time becoming close to those around her. She of course has a lot of love and trust for Brackenshade and has begun to grow a lot closer to Lightgale and even Gannet Star as well, though her feelings towards her leader are a bit complicated. Though she's not overly close with Thunder Isle, she has slowly begun to develop a crush on her, which I think is really cute. Unbeknownst to the cats of SplashClan, Jumbledapple had met a loner who had been living at the horse place near SplashClan territory and had grown closer to him. It wasn't long after that when she was caught in a two-leg trap, and though she was able to escape with just a mild sprain, it was clear to everyone in the clan that the situation had shaken her a lot. At this point, she hadn't really grown overly comfortable with anyone and so she sought the comfort of the horse place loner, and it wasn't long after that she realized she was expecting a litter of kits. Though their relationship didn't seem to continue further, Jumbledapple still has a great relationship with him. Eventually, she gave birth to a single kit who she named Shadekit. As a result of her experience with the two-leg trap, a few SplashClan cats stepped up to offer and help fully train her in fighting, and she spent a long time training with them and is now a much more skilled fighter than she was before. Her daughter, Shadekit, is now a young warrior named Shadetide, and the two are closer to each other than they are to the others in the clan, and it seems that Shadetide unintentionally ended up inheriting Jumbledapple's loneliness. She later got her first apprentice, that being Bushpaw, one of AlgaeFreckle's kits, and she truly felt she was ready to be a mentor and contribute more to SplashClan. However, on their first time out together, Bushpaw drowned in the exact same way Sagepeak and Gorgeflight had previously. She was shaken up by this experience and had begun to spend more time with AlgaeFreckle as she felt guilty for potentially being the reason his daughter had died. It wasn't long after this when she was on the very patrol that AlgaeFreckle's other kit, Quietpaw, died on. She's currently sick with green cough, and I'm sure her recent experiences aren't helping her sickness. I hope she gets better because she's a very interesting character to me, and I hope that things get better for her. As mentioned before, Shadetide is the daughter of the former kitty pet Jumbledapple. Her birth was the result of a brief relationship her mother had with a loner who had lived at the horse place, and Shadetide had gotten to know him well. She spent most of her kithood entirely alone, being the only kit in the nursery, and so she tended to get into a bit of trouble even though she never intended to. Shadekit wanted to help out her clan in any way she could, and one day she ended up following the warriors out of camp to help them hunt and patrol the border, but fell into the river. Thankfully, she was rescued by Tornrun, and it was thanks to his experience that she began to really look up to the warriors of her clan, and she couldn't have thought of a better thing to do than be able to serve her clan just as they had. She even snuck out of camp again and intentionally fell into the river so another warrior could save her, and thankfully she was rescued again, this time by Jade Zinnia. She was 4 months old when there finally were other kits in the nursery, but by the time they were old enough, she had to be made an apprentice. Her mentor was originally AlgaeFreckle, and she couldn't have been more excited to be training to become a warrior, even if the kits she could have been friends with were still in the nursery. Only 2 months after she was apprenticed, her mentor AlgaeFreckle died in the war against Hayes clan, and Brackenshade was picked to be her new mentor. Of course, losing her mentor was tough, but from then on, she realized she needed to put her mind on something else. She decided that she would devote herself to always thinking of ways to improve herself and do something great, and the first thing she thought of was somehow becoming a warrior quickly and being able to mentor her former den mate, Sparkstep, when she eventually became an apprentice. She quickly realized this goal was a little too ambitious and wondered if her goal was even possible to begin with. She was eventually made a warrior and was given the name Shadetide. She was honored for her patience, and throughout her time training, she had grown into a calm young warrior. She'd even learned from her 2 mentors, AlgaeFreckle and Brackenshade, to become an excellent teacher herself, and she can't wait to be able to contribute to her clan and become the best warrior she can be. Next is another newcomer in the clan, old Deuteronomy Plume. She had spent her entire life as a loner and hadn't expected to be anything other until one night in her dreams a starry cat came to her and told her to join SplashClan. She first ended up in HeatherClan territory but was found by a dog lurking on the moor and fled into SplashClan. Thankfully, a patrol of Lightspots, Minkkit, AlgaeFreckle, and jumbledapple found her and were able to lead the dog elsewhere, chase it off, and get her to safety. She would have joined the clans regardless, but the SplashClan cat's show of strength, skill, and intelligence made her even more eager to become a clan cat herself. She's only been in the clan for 4 months now, but she really looks up to the cats who had initially saved her and has been keeping a close watch on Minkkit as she thinks he could be a really great warrior someday. She's a troublesome and great teacher, but since she's only been around for a few months, we'll just have to see how those traits she has will impact her time in the clan. Next is Tidalpaw, the oldest of Lightgale and Jade Zinnia's second litter of kits. As a kit, she was a major daydreamer, hoping that she'd be the greatest warrior her clan had ever seen. She could hardly wait for the day she was apprenticed and spent nearly her entire kithood trying to improve her skills and be more than ready. It wasn't until she was 4 months old when she realized that she liked being a kit and didn't want to grow up just yet, but she forced herself to anyway, because who would want to act like a kitten forever anyway? She was apprenticed to her older sister, Downface, and the last 2 months of her time in the nursery had somehow turned her into a strict, you must follow the warrior code at all times kind of cat. She'd spent so much of her time chastising her littermates and AlgaeFreckle's kits, even if nobody was exactly sure what she was scolding them for. A little while into her apprenticeship, Tidalpaw dislocated a joint while out hunting, and though she recovered, she now has to deal with constant joint pain as a result of her injury. It wasn't long after she recovered from her leg injury that she was seen talking to a rogue, so I wonder what exactly she's getting up to. After months of being the strictest of the apprentices and always scolding everyone else, she turned a whole lot colder than she used to be. She even made fun of Hootkit just because she wasn't an apprentice yet. She's not yet a warrior, but it's looking like to me that she's got maybe another month or 2 until she gets her full name. She hasn't grown close to anyone in particular, but she of course loves both of her dads, Lightgale and Jade Zinnia, and her littermates, but she's closest to her sister, AlgaeFreckle. Next is the youngest of Light Jade's second litter, AlgaeFreckle. Of her littermates, she was the quietest and the most sensitive of the kits in the nursery. She has a hard time handling things that she finds uncomfortable, and she grew up as easily the pickiest nest builder and hated being babied by the older cats. She tended to linger by herself for the most part and was so quiet that she was often looked over by everyone else. When she was apprenticed, Thunder Isle was chosen as her mentor, as Gannet Star hoped the more bold warrior would get AlgaePaw to become more confident. In a way, this backfired because by the time AlgaeFreckle was apprenticed, she she had mostly grown out of being quiet and instead was a bit strange and preferred to do chores in camp rather than hunt or fight, to Thunder Isle's surprise. She was just about the one apprentice who got excited about collecting fresh moss for everyone's bedding, and so the other apprentices would often give her their in-camp chores, but she didn't mind. She liked doing chores. At some point, a warrior found out what was happening and scolded the apprentices for what they were doing, but AlgaeFreckle didn't seem to mind either way. Though she was never particularly skilled in hunting or fighting, she was proud of the progress she made as an apprentice, and strangely enough, even had a bit of a rebellious streak towards the end of her apprenticeship. She was easily the most hardworking apprentice, and that alone was able to push her to be the first of her littermates to receive her full name. Gannotstar named her AlgaeFreckle and honored her for her observance, as she had always been able to look at the world in a unique way, and thus had been able to find things that no one else could, making her a bit similar to Lightspots in a way. She also became the designated camp keeper. Of course, there'll likely be more down the line, but she's just so good of it that she's been given the task of being in charge of it. She isn't close to anyone in particular just yet, but she's closest with her dads as well as her littermates. She has a lot of respect for her former mentor, Thunder Isle, as well as her former denmate, Scorchpaw. Scorchpaw is the oldest of AlgaeFreckle's litter of kits. He was somehow the exact opposite of Titlepaw, starting out not at all wanting to grow up and leave the nursery. He wanted nothing more than to spend his days lounging around in the nursery and taking care of everyone, and he was nervous about becoming an apprentice. No matter how well he explained why he didn't want to become an apprentice, his dad wasn't having it, and by the time he was 6 months old, he had accepted the fact that whether he liked it or not, he was going to be an apprentice. Though it wasn't exactly what he wanted, he was content. Snapfern was chosen to be his mentor, who over his apprenticeship he's grown to generally like and feel positively towards. By the time Scorchpaw was apprenticed, he had grown out of his daydreaming of staying in the nursery for the most part, and soon realized that his real calling was clan politics. Scorchpaw had become very righteous, and the fact that for his entire life he had been very content with his words only added to this. It even got to the point where he would refuse to follow his mentor, Snapfern's orders because it went against his own morals. Though he's not ashamed of his sense of righteousness, he does worry that others are judging him. Aside from all of that, Scorchpaw still thinks positively about his time in the nursery and daydreams about having a mate in kits. On top of that, he also likes to go and bring the queens and kits a little prey to have an excuse to head over there. As for his relationships, he's closest with his father, AlgaeFreckle, and he's got a lot of respect for Titlepaw and AlgaeFreckle, but he feels more positively about AlgaeFreckle. As for his littermates, he loves them all, but has felt closest to Rippleheart, Minkpaw, and Bushpaw. Sparkstep is the next of AlgaeFreckle's kits. She's the second youngest of the living kits, but overall is the third oldest since Quietpaw was born before her. She was the most polite of her siblings as a kit and was known for how oddly observant she was. She was somehow able to see scary things in everything as a kit, often preferring to spend time inside the safety of the nursery, whimpering in her sleep and being terrified after hearing scary stories. She was later apprenticed to Whitestrike, and now being an apprentice, had gained a sense of confidence and became a whole lot more adventurous. She realized how much of the world she had missed out on as a kit and had wanted to explore the entire world. She actually at one point was caught sneaking out of camp with her mentor as she had begged and begged and begged her to take her out to hunt in the territory at night. Though she loved being out in the forest, she hated being cooped up in camp and was the main cat shoving her camp chores onto AlgaeFreckle, and after being scolded for doing so, had her chores doubled. She took this shockingly well and did her duties, though she dreaded them a lot. It was thanks to her sense of adventure and how hard she was working that she and her sister Rippleheart were named warriors first before any of her denmates. Gannotstar honored her for her fearlessness, and throughout her entire life, her natural intuition grew and grew. As for her relationships, she's closest with her dad AlgaeFreckle, Curlrise, and her siblings Scorchpaw, Quietpaw, Rippleheart, and Bushpaw, though she's closest with Scorchpaw. Next of AlgaeFreckle's kits is Rippleheart, the fourth oldest of her litter. As a kit, Rippleheart was pretty standard in terms of how kits are. She was playful and never seemed to be able to sit still, and was a bit annoying to older cats. Rippleheart loved learning about the history of her clan from the elders and hoped to hear all of their stories. She was eventually apprenticed to Curlrise, and it was then when she began to show off how much she liked to make cats around her laugh. Now as an apprentice, she had grown a lot of ambition to succeed and became a great warrior someday. It was a few months into her apprenticeship, however, that Rippleheart fell into a collapsing sand dune and her jaw was broken. broken. Now injured, she begged to be able to leave the medicine den and do her best as an apprentice, but there was no way anyone was going to let her do that with her injury. The clan as a whole is very worried about her, as it hadn't been very long since Longpool had died of a broken jaw, and she was named a warrior alongside Sparkstep, as the clan wanted her to be able to be a warrior in StarClan if she dies. The warriors seem to not have much hope she'll recover, since 2 of AlgaeFreckle's kits have died already, but Rippleheart refuses to give up. She will get better and be a warrior like she always dreamed she would. She can't wait to fully heal and show off her speed and be able to grow and improve, maybe even receiving an apprentice of her own or becoming deputy someday. She's closest with her father, AlgaeFreckle, and while she doesn't have much to say about her mentor Curlrise, she can't say much positive, but she at the very least respects him a bit. Of her siblings, she's closest to Minkkit and Bushpaw, and she was the one who was hurt the most by Bushpaw's death, but tried to stay strong through it all. Minkkit was the youngest of AlgaeFreckle's living kits, but was the second youngest overall. He was the sweetest of his siblings and denmates. Initially, it seemed that Minkkit was going to become a medicine cat, as he seemed to be very interested in herbs and would always choose to be a medicine cat in the games he and his littermates would play. This was the case until the war against ClanGen started, and during one battle, Minkkit was left behind. AlgaeFreckle stepped in to protect him and give him time to escape, but she later died due to her injuries. He was left so shaken by what happened that he couldn't bear having to deal with someone dying because of him again. He later became a warrior apprentice, being mentored by Lightspots, who he had grown to feel relatively positively towards, regardless of his strangeness. Somehow, by the time he became an apprentice, he wasn't just super sweet and nice, he had grown to become charismatic as well. He's a relatively skilled apprentice, being very quick-witted and sharing an interest in clan history with Rippleheart. He's the closest to becoming a warrior and believes that he should have been made a warrior already, but isn't too upset about it. He hopes that Ganetstar will notice how much he's improved, and based on his experience, he should be made a warrior in a month. He's closest with his father, AlgaeFreckle, but also has a lot of love for his littermates. He's got a bit of a strained relationship with Sparkstep, thanks to them having argued as kits, but also feels that Sparkpaw had stolen his place on multiple patrols, and if not for her doing that, he might have already been made a warrior, and so he's a bit jealous of her. And that is the end of SplashClan years 4, 5, and 6. As for the next part of the series, all I can really say is that years 7 and 8 will have to be split into 2 parts as well. Not because the clan is still really big, but because I need a single video just to talk about all the cats who died. Because apparently, the game decided to give SplashClan not 1, but 2 mass extinction events in the span of just those 2 years. I hope you all are ready and prepared because, oh my god, years 7 and 8 are insane. They are very insane. But either way, I hope you all enjoyed.